Morning comes slow in Ashton Hollow, the kind of slow that belongs to men who've seen too much and dogs that still dream of battlefields. Jack Walker wakes with the habit of a soldier. Coffee first, silence second. His companion Rex listens to the wind the way others listen to prayer. For years, peace had been enough, until today, when a package with no name arrives, and the past he buried finally knocks on his door. The morning sun of Ashton Hollow rose like a thin blade of light cutting through the mist. The snow had begun to melt, and small streams ran between the old pine roots, whispering of spring. In a wooden cabin on the outskirts, Jack Walker, a 70-year-old man with a weathered face and steel-gray hair, poured coffee into a chipped mug. His frame was still solid, his movements precise, every gesture the echo of discipline forged decades ago. Beside the stove lay Rex, a Belgian Malinois, 8 years old, his coat the color of burnt wheat, his eyes alert even in rest. Jack glanced at him and muttered, "Still keeping watch, eh, soldier?" The dog's tail flicked once in acknowledgement. The war had ended long ago, but between the two of them, its silence still breathed. Outside, the air was sharp with pine and the faint metallic scent of thawing earth. Jack stepped out onto the porch, stretching his back, feeling the pop of joints that had once carried him through deserts and jungles. The town below was barely waking. Smoke curling from chimneys, a single pickup rumbling down Main Street. Sarah Whitlock, the postmaster, passed by on her bicycle, her red scarf snapping in the cold wind. She was a tall, lean woman in her 50s, with silver streaks in her dark hair, and the stoic grace of someone who had raised 3 sons alone. "Morning, Jack," she called. "You still doing that kung fu of yours?" He smiled faintly. "Keeps the rust off." She laughed, though her eyes softened. She had seen too many veterans rust from the inside. At the post office, the warmth smelled of ink and cardboard. Sarah sorted mail behind the counter, humming a hymn. Jack waited quietly, fingers tracing the edge of a worn photograph in his wallet, a younger version of himself standing beside 2 teammates and a dog not unlike Rex. The doorbell chimed and Deputy Sam Keller stepped in, mid-30s, clean-cut but with dark circles under his eyes from too many night shifts. He greeted them both with his usual tired kindness. "Morning, folks. Roads are clear again. Sheriff says the highway's open." Sam had always respected Jack. He often asked the old man for advice on restraint, how to keep from letting adrenaline rule his badge. Jack's answer had always been simple: know your fear, or it will wear your name. When Sarah handed him a small parcel marked "No Return Address," both men frowned. The handwriting was shaky, old-fashioned, military neatness buried under tremor. Back home, Jack slit the package open on his workbench. Inside was a small metal box, and within it, a rusted external hard drive, labeled with faded black marker. For Walker, if it ever ends. His breath caught. The handwriting was unmistakable. Mike Briggs, his teammate from the 0 unit. Mike had died 40 years ago on a mission so buried it was never recorded. Jack sank into his chair, staring at the object like it might burn through the table. Reckon lifted his head, sensing the shift in air, ears pricking forward. Jack whispered, "You were supposed to be gone, Mike. Why now?" He placed the drive beside his coffee, staring out through the fogged window. The horizon shimmered with morning light, but in his chest, the weight of unfinished ghosts pressed down. Later that day, Jack walked Rex down Main Street, trying to outrun the thoughts clawing behind his eyes. The thawing snow left puddles that mirrored the sky. He passed old Tom Harper, the mechanic, wiping grease off his hands, and Lydia, the librarian, who waved warmly, ordinary souls, bound to a small-town rhythm. But Jack's mind wasn't in Ashton Hollow anymore. He saw dunes, smoke, the body of Mike lying under a broken wall. He remembered the promise whispered into the radio. If one of us falls, the other carries the truth. Rex nudged his knee, grounding him in the present. "I'm all right," Jack lied softly. On the far side of the square, a black SUV idled near the diner, windows tinted. 3 silhouettes inside, faces unseen, watched him too long to be casual. Rex's ears twitched. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Jack's eyes narrowed. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of exhaust and something colder. Intent. The piece of Ashton Hollow cracked just enough for the storm to slip through. The First National Bank of Ashton Hollow was unusually crowded that Friday morning, its brass doors swinging endlessly as townsfolk shuffled in with checks, savings slips, and the faint smell of melted snow. Jack Walker stood in line with a manila folder under one arm, Rex sitting calmly by his side, the leash loose in his hand. The dog's head turned with every new sound, coins dropping, boots scraping, a child's laughter echoing across the marble floor. Jack felt the air hum differently today, as if the room itself was holding its breath. He told himself it was nothing, just the old nerves that never truly retired. But his hand brushed the scar under his sleeve, the one carved by a memory he could never tell anyone. Behind the counter stood Marion Brooks, the branch manager, a woman in her 40s with cropped blonde hair, square shoulders, and eyes that looked like they had memorized every coin that had ever passed through the bank. She smiled at Jack, professional but warm. "Morning, Mr. Walker, still punctual as ever." He smiled faintly. "Old habit, hard to kill." She chuckled, unaware of the ghost that sentence carried. He placed the sealed envelope on the counter. "Safe deposit renewal. I need to store this." Marion nodded and began the routine paperwork. Behind her, the hum of the vault's machinery filled the quiet like a second heartbeat. Rex shifted, his ears flicking toward the front doors. Jack felt the leash tighten slightly. A dog like Rex didn't react to noise, only to intent. He turned his head and the moment froze. 3 men entered the bank, wearing dark hoodies, gloves, and masks, their movements crisp, rehearsed, but not professional enough. The first man, tall with nervous energy spilling from his shoulders, barked a command. The sound cracked across the marble. "Everyone down, this isn't about you." The second man, shorter, wiry, clutching a rifle that shook slightly, moved to the door. The third, Tyler Briggs, walked straight toward the counter, his posture more measured, his eyes alert but conflicted. He tore off his mask. The face beneath it hit Jack like a blow. The same square jaw, the same gray-blue eyes as Mike Briggs, the man he had buried 40 years ago. Tyler was in his mid-20s, tall and lean, with a face that hadn't fully decided whether it belonged to a soldier or a boy. His beard was uneven, more shadow than scruff, and there was something haunted in his stare, the kind of hollow forged by disappointment rather than evil. "Nobody move," he shouted, his voice cracking between authority and guilt. "We don't want your money. We just need the box, number 37. Marion froze. "That's a private deposit, sir. I can't." "Do it." Tyler slammed his palm against the counter, but his voice trembled. Jack's mind began assembling fragments. Briggs, box 37, Mike's last code. It couldn't be coincidence. He looked at the young man's face, again seeing the lines of pain beneath anger. He doesn't even know what he's carrying, Jack thought. Rex stood now, tail low, body tense. Jack whispered, "Stay." The dog froze, muscles coiled but obedient. Around them, people sobbed softly, the smell of fear thick as rust. The taller robber, Eli Crane, about 30, tattooed along the neck with symbols that spoke of prison time, pushed a man to the floor and muttered, "Ty, we gotta move. Cops'll lock this place down in 5. But Tyler didn't move. He looked at Jack. "You get up. You were just talking to her. Where's the key?" Jack's voice was steady. "You don't want to do this, son." The word son hit Tyler harder than the barrel of a gun. "Don't call me that," he hissed, stepping closer. Jack could see the tremor in his hands, the hesitation of a man raised to believe in justice but drowning in betrayal. Outside, a police siren wound through the distance, rising like a storm through the valley. Captain Elena Morales, commander of the county SWAT unit, stepped out of her SUV near the corner, her boots splashing through melted snow. She was in her early 40s, Latina, short hair tucked under a black cap, her expression carved from experience. Years ago, she'd lost her brother in a hostage standoff. Since then, she believed in patience over force. "Get me a perimeter," she ordered calmly. "I want eyes inside in 5 minutes. We keep them talking for 10. Her voice was steady as the snowmelt river beside the town. Through the surveillance feed, she saw a gray-haired man standing beside a dog, motionless amid chaos. She squinted. Who the hell is that? Inside, the young gunman shouted conflicting orders, fear making them loud and clumsy. Tyler finally aimed the rifle toward the floor near Jack's boots. "Sit down," he barked, but Jack didn't flinch. He was watching the boy's grip, the barrel angle, the breathing pattern, 3 deep, 1 shallow, signs of panic. "You look like someone I used to know," Jack said quietly. Tyler's jaw tightened. "You knew my father." The words fell heavy, confirming what Jack already suspected. "Then you also know why I'm here." He turned to Marion. "Box 37 now, or this gets ugly." She reached, trembling, for the keys. Rex growled once, low and controlled. Jack whispered again, "Easy, soldier." Elena's voice came through the loudspeaker outside. "This is Captain Morales. We don't want anyone hurt. Let's talk." Tyler glanced toward the sound, confusion flashing in his eyes. He wasn't made for this, Jack realized. Someone else was pulling the strings. Someone who wanted that box more than life. "Tyler," Jack said softly now, as if speaking to his younger self, "whatever you think's in there, your father didn't die because of me." The boy's breathing quickened. For the first time, the rifle lowered an inch. But behind him, Eli snapped, "We're out of time!" The taller man raised his gun toward the ceiling and fired once. The explosion of sound shattered the calm. Glass rained down. People screamed, and the vault alarm began to wail. Rex leapt instinctively in front of Jack, teeth bared, muscles taut. Smoke from the gunfire curled through the air like the ghost of old wars. And outside, Elena's radio hissed with urgency. "Commander, we've got movement. The old man inside just changed the odds." The air inside the bank was thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. The lights flickered under the strain of the alarm, casting the marble floor in alternating flashes of white and red. Tyler Briggs dragged Jack Walker toward the center of the lobby, the muzzle of his rifle pressed into the old man's shoulder. Jack stumbled but kept his balance, his eyes sharp, scanning, measuring. Behind the counter, Marion Brooks whispered prayers under her breath while clutching the ring of keys to the vault. Rex, crouched low near the bench where the first hostages had gathered, watched every movement with amber eyes, still, silent, coiled. His chest expanded and contracted in shallow rhythm, reading the air for a single word that would unleash him. Jack's sleeve caught on a jagged edge of marble as Tyler shoved him forward, tearing the fabric. Beneath the wool, a faded tattoo glimmered in the pulsing light, a trident crossed with a black star, ink so old it looked carved into the flesh. Eli Crane froze. "Holy hell," he muttered, the rifle drooping in his hands. His gaunt face blanched, and his tattoos seemed to fade with the blood draining from them. He had spent time in Leavenworth years ago, and the older inmates there had whispered about a phantom unit, the kind of men who could end a firefight before it began. "You're one of them," he said quietly, his voice shaking. "Team Zero." Tyler spun, eyes wild. What's that supposed to mean? Eli licked his lips, his throat tight. Ghosts. They trained them for jobs that didn't exist. Whole platoons went missing because of those guys. Jack's expression didn't change. His silence was confirmation enough. The hostages watched him differently now. Less like an old man, more like something ancient that had been sleeping too long. Outside, Captain Elena Morales leaned closer to the camera feed. The tremor in her voice betrayed what her posture refused to show. "If he's what I think he is," she murmured, "and he decides to act, don't send my team in. We'll only add to the body count." Her second in command, Officer Ryan Dorsey, a lean man with a buzz cut and a perpetually clenched jaw, frowned. Ryan was 32, a combat vet who had never learned to let go of the war. "Ma'am, you're saying an old man's going to outshoot SWAT?" Elena didn't look at him. "I'm saying he's not just an old man. You've heard of Coronado legends. Some of them weren't legends." Ryan's skepticism wavered as he zoomed the feed in. The insignia on Jack's arm was unmistakable. "Jesus," he whispered. Back inside, Tyler paced like a caged animal. The mention of Team Zero gnawed at him. "You knew my father," he shouted, voice cracking with rage. "You let him die, didn't you?" Jack met his eyes, and for the first time there was something fragile there, remorse or pity. "Mike made his choice," Jack said softly. "He died keeping his word." "Liar!" Tyler screamed, his finger tightening on the trigger. Rex growled, low and steady, a sound so deep it vibrated through the floor. It wasn't defiance, it was a signal. Jack's eyes flicked to the dog for a fraction of a second, and that was enough for Rex to understand the animal shifted, repositioning subtly between the overturned benches, his muscles like coiled wire ready to spring. Marion sobbed quietly behind the counter, and Eli barked at her, "Get the damn vault open!" His voice was no longer loud. Fear had drained the bravado from him. The third robber, Cal Derner, short and broad-shouldered with pockmarked skin and eyes darting like trapped mice, pressed his ear against the vault door. He was no soldier, just a desperate man who owed too much to too many. Sweat dripped down his temple. 30 seconds, he said. "These cops outside ain't gonna wait forever." Tyler turned back to Jack, shaking his head as though trying to make sense of a life that had suddenly changed shape. "You're lying. My father wouldn't have left me." Jack's voice was calm, but something old and weary bled through. "He didn't leave you. He died protecting the kind of man you could still become." For a heartbeat, silence hung between them until the vault door began to click open. Outside, Elena spoke quietly into her mic. "Hold position. Negotiators on standby. No breach until my order." Her eyes, however, never left the screen. She could see the dog moving now, weaving low along the marble out of Tyler's line of sight. "He's doing something," Ryan said. "What's that dog?" "He's setting a perimeter," Elena interrupted. "That animal's trained for combat." She didn't say what they were all thinking. If the old man had trained the dog himself, then every move was part of a choreography written in another lifetime. Back inside, The final lock on the vault released with a heavy click. Cal exhaled, his hand trembling as he turned the handle. The door groaned open, revealing rows of small metal boxes gleaming like dull silver teeth. 37, Tyler said, his voice suddenly low, reverent even. Open it. Marion obeyed, her fingers fumbling at the key. The small box slid free, unmarked except for a single number engraved along its edge. Tyler grabbed it, eyes glinting with something close to triumph and fear. Jack's gaze followed and his stomach turned. The box was lighter than he remembered. Something was wrong. Rex stiffened. The alarm's rhythm faltered as if the whole building paused. Outside, Elena's radio cracked with static. Commander, the voice came strained. Unmarked van just stopped across the street. 4 men, heavy gear. They're not ours. Elena's blood ran cold. God help them, she whispered. This isn't about a robbery anymore. The shriek of the vault alarm reached a fever pitch before cutting into static. A single spark from Cal Durner's trembling hand had struck a junction box near the counter, and the old electrical system responded with a violent hiss. Blue arcs danced across the ceiling fixtures, and a burst of white smoke filled the air as the fire suppression system erupted, spitting mist like snow inside a storm. The marble floor turned slick underfoot, the red lights flashing through the haze like wounded stars. The crowd of hostages screamed, some coughing, others crawling blindly toward the corners. Tyler Briggs cursed, waving his rifle, trying to see through the dense fog. "Stay down," he shouted, but his voice came back to him in echoes. The chaos swallowed command. Fear replaced hierarchy. Jack Walker moved differently. To the others, the smoke was blindness, but to him it was cover. He dropped into a half-crouch, one hand brushing the ground, every sense recalibrated. The world narrowed to breath and rhythm, the way sound bounced off the walls, the shuffle of boots over marble, the metal click of a rifle safety being released. His training from decades ago returned without thought, instinct reclaiming muscle. He whispered, "Rex." The Belgian Malinois, now ghost gray in the fog, lifted his head. His body was tense, wounded pride flashing behind his intelligent eyes. A droplet of condensation slid down his snout and disappeared into the mist. Jack extended 2 fingers, a silent signal, and Rex melted into the smoke, vanishing like breath in winter. Outside, Captain Elena Morales squinted at the thermal feed on her tablet. The image was a blur of heat signatures twisting through cold haze. "Damn it," she muttered. "The suppression system's killing visibility." Officer Ryan Dorsey leaned over her shoulder, his jaw clenched. "We can breach under this cover," he suggested, his voice low, urgent. Elena shook her head. "Not yet. Wait until the gas settles. 3 minutes minimum." She turned to Sergeant Doug Hanley, a heavy-set man in his 50s with a gray mustache and a limp earned from a roadside bomb years ago. Hanley was the kind of soldier who carried patience like a weapon. "Seal the perimeter and find out who those men are in the van." Hanley nodded, his breath steaming in the cold air as he keyed his radio. Inside, Tyler wiped condensation from his rifle barrel, blinking against the sting of vapor. His pulse hammered. Somewhere in the smoke, he heard Rex's claws scrape against marble, then vanish again. "Where's the damn dog?" Eli Crane hissed, his voice trembling. "I can't see a thing," Tyler snapped. "Just hold position." But his own grip was slippery, his hands shaking. His nerves had cracked. The controlled soldier act was gone. He turned, searching for Jack, and saw only silhouettes shifting in the haze. "You think I won't shoot you, old man?" he shouted into the whiteness. The answer came softly behind him, too calm for comfort. If you were going to, you already would have. Jack moved like a ghost, circling through the smoke. Rex struck first, a blur of movement, fur streaked with mist, eyes locked on the target. The dog lunged and clamped down on Eli's wrist just as he squeezed the trigger. The shot went wild, a single spark disappearing into the ceiling. Eli screamed, dropping his weapon. The metallic clang echoed through the fog, disorienting everyone. Jack surged forward, stepping through the confusion, twisting Tyler's rifle downward and turning his body with the efficiency of an old dance. He hooked Tyler's arm, pivoted on one boot, and locked him into a chokehold, but not to suffocate. "Listen to me," Jack growled, his breath steady even as smoke curled around them. "Your father didn't die because of me." Tyler struggled, eyes wide, choking on both vapor and confusion. You left him there." "No," Jack said, voice low but hard. "I carried him until the airstrikes came. He made me promise to protect you." The words hit harder than any strike. Tyler's body went still. His rifle clattered to the floor. Through the haze, the younger man's face twisted between anger and disbelief. "That's not possible," he whispered. "They told me you abandoned him." Jack's grip eased but didn't release. "They lied. Someone wanted that file destroyed, someone who's watching right now." He glanced toward the shattered window where, faintly, he could see the black outline of the van across the street. Rex released Eli's arm and trotted back, blood on his muzzle but tail wagging low, a soldier reporting mission complete. Outside, Elena's earpiece buzzed. Hanley's voice came through, tense. "Commander, those men in the van. No badges, no plates, heavy body armor. They're setting up equipment. Looks military." Elena's stomach dropped. "Then we're out of time," she said. Inside, the smoke thinned just enough for Jack to see the vault still open, the box still in Tyler's hand. He didn't know yet that it was a decoy, bait placed long ago to lure whoever was really hunting them. As Rex leaned against his leg, Jack felt the tremor beneath the floor, the low hum of approaching engines, the prelude to a new kind of war. The hiss of the smoke began to fade, leaving behind a metallic tang that clung to the back of every throat. The fire suppression mist settled in a fine dust over the marble floor, coating everything in pale frost. Jack Walker stood in the shifting haze, his breath steady despite the weight of adrenaline. The vault door gaped open behind Tyler Briggs, the fluorescent light spilling from within, cutting through the fog like a blade. The young man clutched the metal box in both hands, knuckles white, chest heaving. Jack could see the tremor in him, the war inside his blood. Rex pressed against Jack's leg, limping slightly, a small shard of glass glinting in the fur near his shoulder. Jack's hand went automatically to the wound, fingers slick with blood. The dog didn't flinch, only leaned closer, loyal even in pain. Tyler set the box down on a nearby table, his voice a rasp. "This is what they killed for," he said. He pried it open, and the hinges screeched, a sound like the past screaming to be heard. Inside lay a small hard drive, a folded notebook, and a military-grade data stick wrapped in oilcloth. The smell of old metal and dust rose as he unwrapped it. Jack recognized the writing on the notebook instantly. Mike Briggs's handwriting, blocky and neat, the same hand that had written field reports under fire. A line scrawled across the first page caught his eye. "If you're reading this, the war didn't end where they said it did." Tyler's throat bobbed as he stared at the page, disbelief and guilt warring in his eyes. He knew," he whispered. Jack said nothing because the truth had finally found its own voice. A small body camera, scratched and battered, lay beneath the notebook. Jack picked it up carefully, his hands trembling for the first time that day. He pressed the playback button. The tiny screen flickered to life and static gave way to an image. 2 soldiers pinned behind a wall, gunfire lighting the night like lightning. One of them was Mike, younger, dirt-streaked, shouting over the chaos. "Walker, get the data out. They know." His voice cracked, but not from fear, from urgency. The footage turned wild, a sprint through flames, a helicopter's roar, then the explosion. The screen cut to black. The silence that followed was heavier than the smoke. Tyler backed away, eyes wide. That's my father." His voice broke. "He died trying to save it, not because of you." Jack met his gaze, his own voice low, roughened by memory. He stayed behind because he believed the truth was worth dying for. "You've been chasing his ghost, son, not his killer." Tyler dropped to his knees, shaking, the rifle forgotten beside him. "I thought you left him," he whispered. "They told me you abandoned the team." Jack's eyes hardened, not with anger, but with the exhaustion of carrying 4 decades of guilt. "I buried him with my own hands." Rex whimpered softly, pressing closer, leaving a smear of red against Jack's jeans. The old man knelt beside his dog, tearing his sleeve open and binding the wound with a field-quick knot. "Easy, soldier," he murmured. "You've done your part." Across the room, Eli Crane, clutching his injured wrist, stared at the footage still looping on the small screen. He looked pale, the bravado stripped from him. "That man in the video," he muttered. "The one giving orders. That's Colonel Pritchard." Jack's head snapped up. The name hit like a detonation. Pritchard, the officer who had led their unit, then vanished after the operation went dark. Jack's voice dropped. "He's alive?" Eli nodded, grimacing. "Alive, rich and dirty. He's the one who sent us. Said the box had blackmail material from a long time ago. He said you stole it." Jack's jaw tightened, the truth rearranging itself into a new, colder shape. The van outside, the timing, the hired men. It all made sense now. Pritchard hadn't wanted justice. He wanted his crimes erased. Outside, Captain Elena Morales barked new orders into her radio. "SWAT 1, stand by on my mark. Prioritize civilian extraction and canine med evac. Repeat, canine med evac priority." Sergeant Hanley was already moving toward the armored truck, his limp heavier in the snow. "Copy that, Commander. Vet's 2 blocks down. We'll have transport ready." Elena watched the feed flicker as the bank's lights dimmed. She could see Jack's silhouette kneeling beside the dog, his hand still pressed to the wound. For a moment, she forgot the operation entirely. She saw only a soldier tending another soldier. Back inside, Jack rose, eyes like steel under smoke. He faced Tyler, who now clutched his father's notebook to his chest. "Your fight isn't with me anymore," Jack said quietly. "It's with the man who made both of us ghosts." Tyler nodded slowly, tears carving clean lines through the soot on his face. "Then let's finish it." Jack glanced toward Rex, whose tail thumped weakly against the floor, and then toward the vault where the last echoes of the video still played. "We will," he said, "but first we keep our wounded alive." The world inside the bank had turned to silence before the storm. The smoke had thinned enough for the red laser sights from outside to cut through the haze in thin, trembling lines. Jack Walker crouched beside Rex, keeping one hand pressed over the makeshift bandage on the dog's shoulder. He could feel the faint tremor of the animal's heartbeat beneath his palm, still strong, still fighting. Across the room, Tyler Briggs knelt near the table, the small screen of the body camera still playing his father's final moments. The boy's face, streaked with soot and grief, reflected the flickering image. He looked hollowed out, stripped of every lie he had ever believed. "He didn't hate you," Tyler whispered, mostly to himself. Jack didn't answer. Some truths didn't need echoing. Outside, Captain Elena Morales gave the signal. "Go, window 27 to 30, execute." Her voice was steady, but her hands were tight around the radio. The SWAT team moved like shadows through the snow. 7 figures in matte black armor, their boots soundless against the icy pavement. Sergeant Doug Hanley limped slightly but led from the front, shotgun cradled against his chest, his weathered face unreadable. Behind him, Officer Ben Laird, the youngest on the team at 24, checked his gear twice. He was tall, thin, with a nervous energy that betrayed inexperience, but his loyalty to Elena was absolute. He'd once lost a partner during a reckless breach. Now he followed orders to the second. They stacked at the door, listening to the faint hum of the vault alarm and the soft wail of someone crying inside. Elena's voice came through the comm again. "Remember, non-lethal if possible. Civilians first. We have wounded inside, human and canine." Hanley grunted, "Copy, Commander. Moving." The charge went off with a muffled thud. The back entrance exploded inward, shards of glass and dust curling through the air. The team poured in, fluid, disciplined. 2 seconds later, Eli Crane was face down on the floor, disarmed and pinned under Hanley's knee. Cal Durner froze, his hands shaking, dropping his pistol before anyone could shout. "Don't shoot! I didn't sign up for this," he cried, voice cracking. Laird cuffed him, his expression distant, the detachment of someone who'd learned to turn sympathy off during raids. Tyler turned toward the sound, still kneeling, weapon on the ground. "I'm done," he said hoarsely. "I'm done fighting." Jack stepped between the SWAT team and the boy, raising a hand. His eyes were calm but unyielding. "He's not your threat anymore," he told them. "He's mine to talk to." Elena entered through the front as the scene stabilized. Without her helmet, she looked younger, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes alive with both command and compassion. "Walker," she said quietly, "I need you to step back." "I'm not in your way," Jack replied. "I'm finishing something your laws won't understand." They stood face to face, a soldier who'd outlived his wars and a commander trying to prevent another. She read the weight in his gaze and finally nodded. 2 minutes, she allowed. "Then I'm pulling everyone out." Jack knelt beside Tyler. The younger man's shoulders shook, his hands stained with both blood and tears. "I blamed you," Tyler said. "All these years, I wanted to kill you. Now I don't even know who to hate." Jack placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're not supposed to hate. You're supposed to learn." Tyler looked up, eyes red. "He died for truth. What do I do with that?" Jack's voice softened. "Live like it meant something. That's how you make it count." The boy nodded, his face breaking under the weight of relief. "I was wrong," he whispered. Jack gave a faint smile, weary but proud. "Mistakes don't define you, son. How you fix them does." In the corner, Rex whimpered, his breathing shallower now. Jack turned instantly, signaling Elena. "I need that med team now." Elena snapped into her radio. "Medical 1, green light, bring in Conway." Seconds later, the glass door burst open, and Dr. Leah Conway, a compact woman in her 30s with red hair tied in a loose bun, rushed in wearing a faded green jacket and a stethoscope hanging like a medal. Her freckles stood out against pale skin, flushed with cold. She moved with confidence born from long hours tending farm animals, not soldiers. "Where's my patient?" she barked, voice brisk but kind. "There," Jack said, pointing. She dropped beside Rex, hands moving fast and sure. "Good boy," she murmured as she worked, cutting away the soaked bandage. "You got yourself quite a fighter here, Mr. Walker." Jack's answer came rough. "He's the best soldier I ever had." Outside, Hanley stood by the van, scanning the street. "Commander," he called it, "that black van's gone. Looks like someone pulled them back." Elena frowned. "They'll come again, but not today." She turned toward the bank doors, watching as Dr. Conway and Jack lifted Rex onto a stretcher. Tyler stood a few feet away, handcuffed but silent, watching them with the hollow reverence of someone reborn. Elena spoke quietly to Jack as he passed. "You saved lives today, old man." Jack shook his head. "No, just slowed the next fight." Then, with Rex beside him and snow beginning to fall again, he walked into the white morning. A soldier leaving one battlefield behind and heading, knowingly, toward another. The winter in Ashton Hollow finally surrendered to spring. Snowmelt carved silver ribbons through the fields, and the pines whispered softly under the mountain wind. At the edge of town stood a small facility newly built from red brick and heart, the Hollow K9 Therapy Center for Veterans. The wooden sign was hand-carved by local craftsmen, its edges still raw from fresh sanding. Inside, sunlight streamed through wide windows onto mats and kennels where the sound of barking mingled with laughter, a kind of healing music. Jack Walker stood near the entrance, his figure leaner now, his silver hair cropped short, his flannel sleeves rolled up. Time hadn't softened him, but it had gentled the way he carried his silence. Beside him, Rex padded slowly, his gait slightly uneven, a faint scar running along his neck like a pale metal. The dog looked older but proud, eyes steady, tail wagging with quiet dignity. Tyler Briggs was there too, wearing a plain gray shirt with a community service patch sewn over his heart. He had grown in the months since the bank, his frame filling out, his face no longer a mask of guilt. His hair was shorter, his jaw clean-shaven, his voice steadier when he spoke to people. The court had sentenced him to community service under the Veterans Outreach Program, and under Elena Morales' petition, he had been assigned here, helping train service dogs for veterans with PTSD. It was not punishment, it was purpose. As he adjusted Rex's harness, the dog looked up at him with knowing eyes. "You're healing faster than I am, old man," Tyler said softly. Rex blinked and leaned into his leg, a gesture that said more than any reply. Across the yard, Elena Morales arrived, dressed out of uniform for once, jeans, a khaki jacket, her hair tied back loosely. Away from the tactical radio and body armor, she seemed younger, but her eyes still carried the measured calm of someone who'd seen too much and refused to let it harden her. She waved to the crowd that had gathered for the opening ceremony, townsfolk, veterans, and a few SWAT officers who now looked oddly at home among picnic tables instead of barricades. Sergeant Doug Hanley, still limping but grinning, was setting up chairs with Officer Ben Laird, whose nervous energy had been replaced by an almost boyish humor. "Never thought I'd trade flashbangs for folding chairs," Laird muttered. Hanley chuckled, his gravelly voice softened by peace. "Son, there are worse wars than boredom." The ceremony began when Sarah Whitlock, the postmaster who had first seen Jack that morning months ago, stepped forward with an old American flag folded neatly in her arms. The fabric was faded, its colors muted by years of weather, but the stitching held. Her gray hair was tied in a loose braid, and though her hands trembled slightly, her voice was firm. "This flag hung over Ashton Hollow since my husband's unit came home from Iraq," she said. "Today it flies again, not for war, but for what comes after it. As she handed the flag to Jack, the old veteran's hand brushed hers, and for a moment both shared an understanding that didn't need words, the quiet cost of survival. Jack walked to the flagpole at the center of the yard. Tyler stood beside him, holding the metal ring. Elena watched, arms crossed, a small smile flickering through her usual composure. The flag unfurled in the mountain breeze, the sun catching on the worn threads like a promise kept too long. Jack reached into his pocket and drew out two things, a dull silver dog tag engraved with Michael Briggs and a small USB drive encased in steel. He placed them in Tyler's palm, his voice low but clear. "Your father wanted the truth carried, not buried. Now it's yours. Do better with it than we did." Tyler's eyes filled but didn't break. He nodded, fingers closing around the tokens like vows. "I will, sir." Jack smiled faintly. "Good. Then we're even." From the porch, Dr. Leah Conway watched with her sleeves rolled up, a bandana tied over her fiery hair. She was cleaning medical crates, her hands still smelling faintly of antiseptic and hay. She looked over at Rex with affection. "That dog's tougher than half the Marines I've patched up," she murmured. Elena grinned. "That's because he doesn't argue." The two women laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that belonged to peace hard won. Children ran past with a frisbee, one of the new therapy dogs chasing after it. As the last note of the national anthem faded, Jack stepped back, letting the flag wave fully open. The mountain wind carried the scent of new grass and distant rain. Tyler sat down on the low stone bench beside Rex, who rested his head on the young man's knee. The scar on his neck gleamed faintly in the sunlight, not a wound, but a memory of loyalty. Jack watched them in silence, his heart easing in a way he hadn't thought possible. Elena joined him, hands in her pockets. "You know," she said quietly, "you could stay. We could use someone like you here." Jack looked at her, then at the hills beyond. "Maybe," he said, his voice soft as wind over gravel. "For now, it's enough to know they'll be all right." The flag rippled overhead, the mountain stood guard, and somewhere in that quiet space between breath and memory, peace, fragile, earned, and real, finally found a home. In the quiet hills of Ashton Hollow, peace didn't arrive through strength. It came through forgiveness. Jack, Tyler, and Rex showed us that even the deepest scars can become symbols of grace when we choose truth over anger, mercy over revenge. Maybe that's the real miracle. Not the ones that split the sea, but the ones that mend a broken heart, a wounded soul, a life given a second chance. Every sunrise is proof that God still believes in us, even when we forget to believe in Him. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that hope never retires. Leave a comment, subscribe to, and may God bless every soul watching, especially those still waiting for their own small miracle.